Pat sipped his espresso and watched the terrorist from across the room. He shivered as he was hit by a bout of déjà vu. This wasn't the first time he'd had the Falcon under observation. The first had been a lifetime ago, when he and his unit had holed up in their observation post, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. He still remembered the smell of the dried riverbank, the sparse vegetation, and the adrenaline. 5 heart-pounding hours as they waited for the signal. Then it came. They'd snuck into the encampment under the cover of darkness, following the map ingrained in their heads. Their orders were to take the Falcon alive, then destroy the training camp. That last bit was a piece of cake. They blew shit up every day. It was the first one they had trouble with. It was easier to kill a man than take him alive. Exfil with a live prisoner is not simple, especially if you're being fired at by a bunch of over-enthusiastic wannabe terrorists in a training camp in North Africa. Pat shook his head. They'd only just made it out of there in one piece, with their prisoner intact. Fast forward 16 years, and here was Amir al-Jabiri, a.k.a. the Falcon, having lunch with a dark-haired beauty in a restaurant in central London. "No change." He spoke into the Bluetooth earpiece from behind his coffee cup. "Got that?" came the reply. It was Anna's voice in his ear, the rogue unit's logistic manager, and the glue that held the office together. Prison hadn't aged al-Jabiri. The terrorist looked fit and healthy for his 53 years. He was greying at the temples, but then who wasn't? His beard was dark and trimmed, and his body as lithe and muscular as Pat remembered. The Falcon knew he was under surveillance. A known terrorist living in the United Kingdom. Come on. Of course they'd be watching him. Except it wasn't MI5. It was the SAS rogue unit. "He served his time," the Home Secretary told Pat over lunch a few days ago. "We can't touch him. His solicitor would go nuts." His solicitor was human rights lawyer Ingrid Sutton. Pat had met her once before and hadn't enjoyed the experience. In his opinion, terrorists such as al-Jabiri gave up their rights when they bombed innocent victims. Before his capture in North Africa all those years ago, he'd blown up one hotel, an embassy, and set off 2 car bombs in crowded European capitals. You had to be human to qualify for human rights. This woman was interesting, though. Her long, dark hair hung over her shoulders, visible beneath her jade-green headscarf. Her eyes were lowered, but she had prominent cheekbones and full, sensual lips. The hands holding her knife and fork were slender with elegant fingers and medium-length, unpainted nails. She wore tailored trousers and a soft, silk blouse open at the neck. Strange, considering she also wore a headscarf. Was that out of respect for her lunch partner? Were they together? He studied their body language. Al-Jabiri was leaning forward, talking to her, his hands resting easily on the cutlery. His face was animated, or as animated as al-Jabiri got. His hard lips were curled into a smile and his dark eyes glittered. There was no doubt he was enjoying her company. The woman was harder to read. She sat with a straight back and an almost rigid pose. She smiled and nodded in all the right places, but Pat got the feeling she was holding back. He put her in her mid to late 30s, professional and astute, but with guarded eyes and an air of reluctance about her. She was a beautiful woman, though, and it was easy to see why al-Jabiri was attracted to her. Pat sipped his coffee and pretended to read the paper, glancing up every now and then to check on the couple. They finished their meal and paid the bill. Cash, of course. "He's on the move," he muttered into his earpiece. "Got that?" came the reply. The couple began moving towards the exit. They had to walk past Pat's table to get there. Pat bowed his head, studying the newspaper as they walked past. Except they didn't. They stopped right next to him. Shit. He'd been made. "Hello again," said the Falcon, his deep voice dripping with disdain. "I see you're working for MI5 now." Pat glanced up. "Amir al-Jabiri. Thought you were in prison."